Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. Alright, so we're only going to be talking about two different things this week. First off, let's talk about the brand new full trailer for Why the Last Man, the FX exclusive show, which has been in development for like 6 years. I mean, it looks faithful enough to at least the setup, premise, and characters of the first couple of issues, which is astounding. I would have expected something a little bit more off-key or a little bit more out there, given that it's been in such a development strife. They had to recast like an entire set. I think a showrunner left. It has been pretty chaotic, and I never thought it would actually see the light of day. Didn't expect it to look this okayish. That said, there are already a lot of calls about like the entire modus operandi of the comic, and they are completely valid because of how dated and unnecessary and out of touch the comic really is. If you go back and reread a couple of the first arcs, it becomes clear that it is so deeply rooted in 2000s era culture, like in terms of its satire, in terms of its political commentary, in terms of its social commentary, in terms of its gender commentary, in terms of everything about it. It is entirely the product of the early 2000s, like 2001. That is the benchmark by which this series revolves itself around. Let's just say it's been like 19-20 years since then, and the show itself, like I've said, seems pretty faithful, and it makes people worry that it hasn't progressed since. Like it hasn't actually made any strides that, you know, society has, and that people have, and that representation has, and that social and cultural understanding and awareness of different marginalized groups have. And that's completely fair. I mean, this is a comic that is just insanely off color at times. There are so many things about it that just would not fly today, and they shouldn't. It was half baked and undercooked back then. And my thought and my hope is that the reason it took so long for this show to finally come out is because hopefully the showrunners realize this and have been at work to make it more palatable and more reasonably kind of sensitive to what's going on now, and that they were trying hard as they could to chop away the early 2000s stench off this thing. Because if not, then what was this all for? If it came out and it was still as badly toned and as badly handled, then why did it spend all this time being in development? So fingers crossed. Hopefully it turns out good. And yeah, the comic goes insanely weird and insanely crazy places. Anyway, let's move into the big thing I want to talk about, which is my small, hopefully spoiler-free review of the Suicide Squad, or the Suicide Squad 2, or whatever have you, James Gunn's soft reboot of this franchise. I did not like it. I think the best thing I could say about it is that it is less of a butchered, obviously manipulated and edited experience than the previous movie. But on the whole, they are very equitable pieces. Like, they are like neck and neck in terms of where the actual quality is, in terms of final realized products. Like, they are both very dull. The characters really don't get much to do, and the story and plot is just unceasingly bland and just horrendously presented. I will give the first movie at least a couple things that I'll get to later. But yeah, I did not enjoy the Suicide Squad. I thought it was overly long. I thought it was completely boring. I thought the characters were nothing. I thought the action was bad, and I thought that the story was needlessly convoluted and all in the service of a joke that wasn't funny to begin with, and may have been funny only if it had been done once, but the story does it several times. But let me break this down. In terms of short subjects, because it's a really complicated thing to get into. I want to get into the characters. Now, the characters in the Suicide Squad, they might be a lot more better acted, and their performances might be getting a lot more room to breathe, because we're not like completely junking and shredding and blending their character arcs into montages after the fact. Like, these are actual characters that have lines, and the actors are able to imbue them with some sort of rudimentary personality. That said, it is entirely rudimentary. There are almost no characters to be seen in this movie that are worth any emotional engagement, worth any sort of arc, or have any kind of complexity or depth. I think one of the big fan favorites of this movie that everyone's talking about is Polka Dot Man. But for example, Polka Dot Man is a character, and I say that loosely, that is predicated on a single joke. And it's not a good joke, and that's all his character is. The character itself is too morose and too serious to be taken as an overly humorous character but he's only given goofy ass lines to say and goofy ass things to do, which means that he strips of any qualities of being an emotionally captivating, serious character. We're not taking him seriously at all. And that can have its own benefit. Like, you can have a character like that and you can ride that line and balance that tone and have a lot of humor and a lot of pathos given to it. But James Gunn doesn't do that. He just gives Polka Dot Man one joke, and it's a bad joke, and he just keeps getting louder and louder at telling it, and it's just not good. It makes every time Polka Dot Man is on screen a chore. Then the next one up is Ratcatcher 2, or Ratcatcher, let's call her, who I think is maybe one of the best performances in the movie, but the character herself is just completely one note and one dimensional. Like the actress does a great job at giving her a personality and an affable one, but any type of character depth or character engagement is totally predicated on other characters around her. Like, for the first 2 acts, she's completely dependent on her dynamic with Bloodsport, and in the final act, it's switched to Flag. Like, these are things where she doesn't have her own character arc. She's just sort of latching on to the characters around her, and that's a shame because the actress does a good job, and the character could have done a lot more, but they don't. She just exists there, so it's really it's like a flat line. Next up, we have Harley Quinn, who has even less to do in this movie than she does in the first movie. In the first movie, like I said, a lot of the character beats and character arcs were butchered in order to make flashy montages, but what remained of Harley Quinn's arc in that movie and Margot Robbie's performance in that movie was stellar. Like, there's that scene I always bring up where she's, in the original context, been totally abused by the Joker and left to die, and she has to go back to Suicide Squad and rejoin them, to escape. And she's trying to give a stiff upper lip kind of look. She's trying to save face, and she's like on the kind of fringes of crying, and it's such a wonderfully captivating performance by Robbie. Like, it's like someone really sort of tapping into that emotionally fraught experience and the sort of double think and double speak you're enduring when you don't want to, like, truly let yourself be known or let yourself be vulnerable like that. You can't say anything like that about this movie. You can't. It's impossible. She has no purpose in this movie. The only purpose she has in this movie is to be a prop that holds the Deus Ex Machina. And that's it. Like, she's only there to have this one scene that could have been any character. I think that Gunn really just wanted to both have Harley Quinn around because I guess DC's mandate that she become a thing, but couldn't think of any reasonable way for her to be involved, so gave her like the one thing that the plot kind of hinges on at the end, in the finale, in the climax, in the final battle, and that was it. That was the extent of what he wrote for her. Now, there are other things that I guess happened to her, but they're all just setups for gags, and that's it. Like, there's no depth there. She has like a couple of lines about like where she's been, how she's growing, but it's all tell with no show, and that's a disappointment. And the rest of the characters are nothing. Like, I don't even know how to describe Peacemaker. Peacemaker is a character that would have been really great if it weren't for John Cena. Like, John Cena is not a great actor, but the character Peacemaker could have been incredible had there been a better performance underneath it. Like, it's a character where it's the butt of the joke a lot. It's the character who is the most obvious comedic foil to everybody. And then there's a point, and I guess this is a spoiler, but that flips. And John Cena is not good enough actor to make that flip believable or make that flip threatening. It's a scene where the entire resonance of that switch is totally carried by the performer acting against John Cena, Joel Kinnaman, who is just bodying every emotional engagement quota on that, in that dynamic, in that exchange, in their dialogue together. Other than that, it's just a totally immemorable, just joke-laden performance. And he's just so flat and so wooden, and it is just a giant disappointment. Now, I think that's about it for characters. I don't even know what to say about Bloodsport. Bloodsport, I guess, is okay. Other than, like, it being Idris Elba, it's almost basically the same sort of character art that Deadshot got. You were saying, like, oh, no, he's different than Deadshot. Yeah, his mannerisms are different. His attitude and personality is different. But the character arc is basically the fucking same. And it's just not interesting to see it happen again. It's the hallmark of a bad sequel. You just redo shit. Now, talking about in terms of like plot, in terms of storytelling, again, I don't want to go into spoilers because this movie is so fucking boring that just explaining the plot would bore me to tears again. But it's just the way the story is told and the narrative unfolds is something that is horrendously done, even though the idea had merit. And it's one of those things where a lot of the gags about the narrative is we see something and then we get, oops, here's what really happened, and then we double back to re-show the same events from a different perspective that, elucidate stuff that we thought was going to go on. And, that's meant to be surprising, that's meant to be enjoyable, that's meant to be humorous, all this kind of stuff. You get visual gags, you get sidekicks, you get character gags because of what we're now seeing later on. Gives new light and new kind of relevance to what happened, that kind of stuff. It's very easy, narrative gimmick. It happens a lot in movies, especially like heist movies or anything like that. And I think the first time it happens, it's really good. It's like a great sort of punchy button to start a movie with. And I have no complaints about that, really. I really don't. Except the movie does it like 6 different times. And each time, it loses less and less power to the fact of the matter being that we're just seeing a movie catch up with itself again and again and again. And it's a movie that isn't like necessarily very deathy or complex. And so it just makes everything feel like it's being dragged out and slowed down. It strips the movie of all momentum and all energy. And we're just like along for the very slow ride of telling this very simple plot. And I was bored out of my mind. Like, this movie is 2 hours long, a hair over 2 hours long even. And it is just a long marching chore. Because you're left with no characters that you can give a damn about. And you're left with a plot that is just stretched to high heaven. It's insane. And the action is just really bad. Like, it's so flat. A lot of stuff that could have been really stylistic, that could have been really sort of kinetic and have a lot of punch to it, is just done really flat. There are several key moments of this, but I think one of the biggest things is this big Harley Quinn action scene that everyone fucking talks about right now. And I don't know what people get out of it. Like, the only time that it gets anything like interesting going on is the like last 2 seconds of the scene where it becomes like wholly CGI animated like neon fest. But that's like the very end. It's like 10 seconds before the fucking scene ends. The entire action scene is just a really bad version of the Yondu arrow scene from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's just a worse version of that. It's cool to see Margot Robbie do this kind of stuff. I can guess it was probably her, all these long shots, but overall, it's just a really long scene that is for a character, like I said, that has no fucking purpose in the movie. And so it's just one of those things that just builds up. It's like a def million cuts for this thing. I do want to give like high praise to at least one character, and that is Colonel Rick Flag, played by Joel Kinnaman, who I think has the strongest character arc, the only character arc, and the strongest performance. Like, this is a character that has a lot of pathos, that grows, that learns more stuff, that develops, and then makes a decision based on all the stuff that he's been through and all the changes that he's experienced. And it's great. I think Joel Kinnaman does a great job. I think that moment was probably the most captivating moment of the entire movie, where he decides to like make the final actions that he does. It's truly engaging and had some extraordinary passion into it. It's a shame the rest of the movie couldn't find anything like that to imbue itself with. It's really, really terrible. And I do want to talk about one other thing, and that is Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. I think that she is still a fantastic casting choice, but it's insane how both these movies write her like a complete fucking dumbass. Like, they both make a complete clown of her, and I don't know what's going on. Like, why? Like, you have a second chance with this character, a really imposing and like really captivating villain, or at least authority figure, and she's still written like a fucking moron, like an incompetent fucking moron. And that's a strike again. It's another thing we're seeing again that isn't an improvement at all. And there's so many things here that aren't improvements or just like equivalent exchanges with the first movie. And the only thing I say about the first movie is that yes, it was as boring, and yes, it was an incomprehensible mess. But at the very least, we got like those Harley scenes that had some resonance if you knew what was actually going on. And El Diablo's Last Stand. Like, I gave a fuck about El Diablo. He was a fucking great character, stuck in a terrible movie. And there's no El Diablo here. The only one that comes close is Joel Kinnaman. And like I said, he has to wear the brunt of John Cena's just flaccid and wooden acting. So if I had to give the fucking crown to one of these two, and they both fucking suck, I had to give it to the first one. This one, though, at least it was competently managed and edited. That's the only prize I can give it, honestly. So overall, 6 out of 10. And yeah, 2 thumbs down. Anyway, that's it for this week. I want to give a shout out to Converse for the show at DOTEMCE. Please check them out. They're amazing. Give them all the love they can get. They truly deserve it. And have a great one out there. See you again next time. And be safe out there.